What's going on, guys? It's Brandon back here for another video. Today we're going to change the pace on what we've been doing. So we've been doing a lot of playoff stuff, not much on Chicago, which is what this channel is basically based on. So we're going to go take a look at the Chicago Blackhawks season once again. The season they finished 28, 42, and 12, and by categorizing, going by wins, OT wins, losses, and OT losses, the Hawks went 16, 12, 42, and 12. So so 16 and 12 add up to 28, and 42 and 12 are still the same. So what we have here is I've taken every team in the league and got every single Blackhawks record against every team in the league. This is by standings-wise, the league standings. So we have Florida, the President's Trophy winners at the top, Montreal, the worst team in the league, at the bottom. So we'll start from the top, I guess. So Florida, no wins, no loss, no OT wins, 2 losses, and no OT losses. No shame in that, as Florida was the President's Trophy winner. Florida wins 5-2 and 4-0 in those meetings. So we're going to see the foundation of where stuff went wrong. Then they play Colorado, who they play 4 times during the year since they're in their division. 0 wins, 0 losses, 3 losses, and 1 overtime loss. So 1 out of a possible 8 points. They lose 4-2, 2-0, 6-4, and then the OT loss was a 4-3 loss in overtime, which was one of the most viewed videos on this channel, and Cale Makar is a beast BFR. And Carolina, play them twice since they're in the Eastern Conference. 0 wins, 0 losses, 0 wins, 0 OT wins, 2 losses, no OT losses. Those losses were 6-3 and 4-3. So not too bad against Carolina, but they are yet to register a win. Toronto, 4th in the league, had played them twice since they're in the East. No wins, no OT wins, 1 loss, and 1 overtime loss. And they lose 3-2 in OT, and then they lose 5-4. So, again, not getting really successful in the win column. They can't beat the good teams, they're not going to win. Minnesota, who was 5th in the league, 0 wins. Started saying goals like I was doing like a person do. I'm so used to the stats with players. Excuse me. 0 wins, 0 OT wins, 3 losses, and 1 OT loss. Those scores were 5-1, 5-0, 3-1, and 4-3 in overtime. Calgary, they played them 3 times since they're in their conference, but not in their own division. 0 wins, 0 OT wins, 3 losses, 0 OT losses. Those scores were 5-2, 5-1, and 5-2. Pretty consistently bad against Calgary. Now moving on to Tampa. Again, they're in the East, so they only play them twice. 0 wins, 0 OT wins, 2 losses, and 0 overtime losses. Those scores were 6-3 and 5-2, and they still do not have a win against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams down. Now, 8th in the league, we have the Rangers, who they have 0 wins against, 0 OT wins against, 2 losses, and 0 OT losses. The scores were 3-2 and 6-2. So 1 close game in there, one of them kind of got away from them. But yeah. Now, St. Louis. The Hawks finally get it's the 9th team in the league that they get their win against, and it's only 1. So no wins, 1 overtime win, 3 losses, and 0 OT losses. They lose 1-0, 5-1, and 4-0. So they're shut out twice. And then they win in overtime once, 3-2. That's their first win on the board. Now Boston, who's 10th in the league, 0 wins, 0 losses, 0 wins, 0 OT wins, 1 loss, 1 overtime loss. Those scores are 4-3 and 2-1 in overtime. So bringing more points, what you should be seeing is that the worse the teams get, the more points they should be getting. So they have a win here, an OT loss here, a couple OT losses up here. But then they finally get their first regulation win against team in 11th, which is Edmonton, who they go 1 win, 1 OT win, and 1 loss against, and 0 OT losses. They beat them 4-1. They beat them in overtime 4-3, and they lose to them 5-2. So that's their first regulation win on the board. And of the top 11 teams, they get 1, 2, 3 wins, which is not good enough whatsoever. Now we move on to the second tier of teams, where we go with Pittsburgh, who's in 12th, and during the season they go 0 wins, 1 OT win, 1 loss, and 0 overtime losses in 2 games. So they lose to Pittsburgh 5-2, but they get the shootout win against Pittsburgh, and they win that one 3-2. Capitals, 0 wins in regulation, but they have 2 overtime wins against them, but 0 losses, 0 OT losses. So we have the first team that the Hawks never lost to this season, and they win 4-3 in a shootout and 5-4 in overtime. So 2 OT wins, so the Capitals get 2 points out of those 4 games, but the Hawks were able to sweep the Capitals early in the season. The Kings, who are in the, I believe, 14th spot, the Hawks had 0 regulation wins, 1 overtime win, 2 losses, and 0 OT losses. So their one OT win is a 4-3 shootout win, and the losses were a 5-2 and 4-1 loss. And now Dallas, they play them 3 times this year, even though they're in their own division. It's weird. There's like 2 teams in their division that they only play, I believe, 3 times. It's just the way the thing is set up. It's weird. So they lose once in a 6-4, and then they lose in overtime twice. They lose 4-3 in overtime, and then they lose 1-0 in a shootout. And that was a weird game because technically both goalies got a shutout, and the Hawks didn't even win it, so that's pretty odd. Now Nashville, the last playoff team, number 16. The Hawks play them 4 times. They have 0 regulation wins, 1 OT win, 2 losses, and 1 overtime loss in this area. So they win, I believe it was 2-1 in overtime. Then they lose 6-1 and 4-3, and they lose in overtime 3-2, I believe. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, they play them 4 times. They pick up 3 points out of 8. Not good enough. And now that's the line where the playoff teams end. So that you should be seeing here is the non-playoff teams, the worst teams. They should be getting more wins against. Vegas, number 17. They get 1 win, 1 OT win, 0 losses, 1 overtime loss. So they pick up, not too bad in 3 games, they pick up 3 points out of 6. And it should have been 6 points out of 6, but we're not going to talk about that. And they win 2-1 in regulation, and then they lose 5-4 in overtime over a game that must not be named. And then they win 4-3 in a shootout to eliminate Vegas from the playoffs. So actually, they pick up 4 points. They pick up 5 points out of 6. So I don't know what I was saying. So Vancouver in the 18th spot. They play them 3 times this year. They get 1 win in regulation, 0 OT wins, 2 losses, and 0 overtime losses. So 1 win was a 1-0 win and an absolute robbery by Marc-Andre Fleury while he was a Blackhawk. And the 2 losses were 4-1 and 3-1. So Vancouver kind of had their way with Chicago this year. And moving on to Winnipeg, who is number 19 in the league, they get 1 regulation win, 0 overtime wins, 2 losses, and 0 OT losses. That win was a 3-1 win in Winnipeg, I believe, and then those losses were both 5-1 and 6-4. So not too great against their divisional opponents this year. Columbus. The Islanders. They play them twice this year. They get 1. They lose once. They win in overtime once, but no wins or no OT losses. Their loss was a 4-1 win or 4-1 loss, and then their 1 overtime win was a 3-2 shootout win, which should have been 1 in regulation. But we're not going to talk about that. Now Columbus, they play them twice as usual. And they get 1 win against them, 0 OT wins, 1 loss, and 0 overtime losses. So they win 4-2 against them, but then they lose 7-4. So, as you can see right here, this is where I'd say mark off the bad teams from the we're just mediocre teams. Now San Jose, they play 3 times. They beat them 0 times in regulation. They win in overtime once, and they lose to them twice, and they lose in overtime to them no times. So they lose 2-0 and 4-1, but they end up getting 5-4 shootout win in Pat Foley's final game as the broadcaster. So that was a good way for him to go out. Now, moving on, we have, I believe that's number 23 up there. 23, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. So Anaheim is number 23 on the board. The Hawks, this is the only team they've beat more than twice this year, as they sweep Anaheim 3 regulation wins, no OT wins, no losses, no OT losses, the best case scenario. And they had their way pretty handedly. They win 3-0, 8-3, and 4-2. So they assured showed their dominance over Anaheim, who had a pretty good season for what they were expected to be. So that's the one team that the Hawks were able to handle this year from the West. Now, Buffalo, they get no wins against them, no OT wins. They lose once, and in an overtime loss once. They lose 6-5 in another game that shall never be spoken about again. And then a 3-2 OT loss in the final game of the year. And, yeah, that's Buffalo. Detroit was another team that they, kind of like Buffalo, except they played better against Detroit. So they get 1 win, 0 OT wins, 1 loss, and 0 OT losses, similar to Columbus. And they lose 6-3, but they win 8-5, and that was a pretty handed win. They nearly blew that game as well. I remember that game. So Ottawa, the third and final team that they swept this season, I believe. Yes. So Ottawa, they get 2 wins, no OT wins, no losses, and no overtime losses. They win 5-1 and 6-3. So against Ottawa, they were pretty good. Against Washington, Anaheim, and Ottawa, they performed. And now moving on to New Jersey, the one game I saw them this year at home. They play them twice. They get 1 win, 0 OT wins, 0 losses, and 1 overtime loss. So their 1 win is an 8-5 win, which I attended. Very good game. Kane and Hagel both had hat tricks. Hagel obviously no longer with the team. And the 1 OT loss was a 4-3 OT loss in the second game of the season, in which the Hawks were down 3-1 in the final minute and tied the game. Now moving on to Philadelphia. 1 win, 0 OT wins, 1 loss, and 0 overtime losses. They beat Philly 3-1 in the third to last game of the season, and they lose 4-3 to them in a nationally televised game in Philly because the Hawks don't win in Philly since 2010 of the Stanley Cup Final, Game 6. So yeah, now moving on to the final 3 teams, we have Seattle, who they went 1 win, 0 OT wins, 1 loss, and 1 OT loss this year, so taking 3 points out of 6 against the new team. Not the way to start. They win 4-2, and then they lose 3-2 in overtime and lose 2-0. So, yeah, Seattle kind of had their way with the Hawks in their opening season, and they weren't good. That's about it. Now, Arizona's a rare case because you have 1 across every single category on the board. 1 win, 1 OT win, 1 loss, and 1 overtime loss. They win 2-1. They win 4-3 in overtime. They lose 6-4, and then they lose 3-2 in overtime. So quite an interesting scenario with Arizona, and basically, honestly, on paper, the worst team in the league. How that happened, that's an embarrassing thing that they lost 2 games against Arizona, but it was the Hawks this year. I'm not surprised. So then Montreal, the worst team in the league. The Hawks are actually, that's a lie. The Hawks also swept 4 teams this year. They beat Montreal as well. They get 1 win, 1 OT win, no losses, and no OT losses. So they take 4 points out of 4. They win 2-0 and 3-2 in overtime. And that's it. We've covered all 82 games in this 31-team span. So now we're going to look at some specifics, which some of them are off screen, so my apologies, but I try to fit as much of this on screen as I can. So against playoff teams, you can see here, the Hawks went 1-7-29-7. So that's 44 games. They have 8 wins, 29 losses, 7 overtime losses. 8 wins in 44 games is not going to get you in the playoffs against playoff teams. And against non-playoff teams, they do better. 15 wins, 5 OT wins, 13 losses, and 5 OT losses. So that's a 20-13-5 record in 38 games. Clearly, they did much better against non-playoff teams. Anaheim was a major booster, I could assume. Same with Montreal, same with Ottawa. And Washington was probably the only... Actually, no, that didn't really help them at all because those were overtime wins, so that's why they only have 1 playoff win. And there goes my pen. Anyway... And so then I basically dissected this into several different categories. So that was against playoff teams. Now by conference, we look at the Western Conference. They play 50 games against the Western Conference this year. 9, 7, 26, and 8. So that's 9 regulation wins, 7 OT wins, 26 losses, 8 OT losses. So a combined record of 16, 26, and 8. Not good against the Western Conference. And by Western Conference, you mean, if you don't know hockey, Edmonton, San Jose, Arizona, Seattle, Anaheim, LA, Dallas, Nashville, Vegas, Vancouver, Winnipeg, St. Louis, Calgary, Minnesota, Colorado. Then we also did the Eastern Conference, who they play, since they would play 50 games against the West. You take 82 subtracted by 50, you get 32. They go 7, 5, 16, and 4, which when combined is 12, 16, and 4. So not as bad, but it's still a losing record. And if you don't know, again, Eastern teams: Montreal, Philadelphia, New Jersey, Ottawa, Detroit, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Washington, Islanders, Columbus, Boston, New York Rangers, Tampa, Toronto, Carolina, Florida. So, yeah. Now, moving on to the divisions. So I dissected them one more time, and we did them by division. So we're going to start with the one they play the most, in the Central. They play the Central 26 set times. So the Central Division consists of Arizona, Dallas, Nashville, Winnipeg, St. Louis, Minnesota, and Colorado. So it's those teams only. They go 2, 3, 15, and 6, or in other words, 5, 15, and 6 in 26 games. So awful against them. That's a combined 16 points out of 52. 16 is not even 1/3 of 52, so that's an issue. And against the Pacific, they actually do 500ly. Against the Pacific, they go 7, 4, 11, and 2, and that's 11, 11, and 2 in 24 games. So they get about 24 points in 24 games, so not too bad. And if you want to know the Pacific Division teams, they're obviously the worst division. They only had 3 teams make the playoffs, so that also helps. You have Calgary, you have Edmonton, you have LA, and then you have Vegas, Vancouver, San Jose, Anaheim, Seattle. So it's the worst division in the league, so you expect that. Atlantic Division, not great either. They go 4, 1, 8, and 3. So that's the second most regulation wins of any of the on here. So they go 5, 8, and 3 in 16 games. The Atlantic Division teams consist of Montreal, Ottawa, Detroit, Buffalo, Boston, Tampa, Toronto, and Florida. So you have 4 big brutes in the top 4 of the Atlantic, and you get 2 wins against Montreal. You get 1 with the regulation wins against Montreal. You get 2 against Ottawa, 1 against Detroit. So you have 5, 8, and 3. That's in 16 games. That's, let me think, 13 points against Atlantic Division teams, and in 16 games. Again, that's just not good enough. And then the Metropolitan, where they go 3, 4, 8, and 1, which is combined in 16 games, 7, 8, and 1. So they did not too bad against the Metropolitan Division. They have 15 points in 16 games, which is better. Still 8 losses in regulation, so that doesn't help. Metro teams consist of Philadelphia, New Jersey, Pittsburgh, Washington, Islanders, Columbus, Rangers, and Carolina. So those are the teams you have there. But as you can see, the Hawks' failures this year were kind of all across the board. They don't get a win. The 11th, the best team that they win against is 11th. Actually, no, it's 9th. The first regulation win they get is 11th. The highest team they sweep is Washington, who is in 13th. Who else do they sweep? They sweep Ottawa, who is 32, 31, 29, 30, 29, 28, 27th. Or no, was it? I don't remember if Chicago was before. I think Ottawa was above Chicago just by 1. Yeah, so I'm going to say, because Chicago went 26th or 27th this year, 6th worst. 6th worst, so I think 26th Ottawa. 27. 30, this is really bugging me. 32, 31, 30, 29, 28, 27, or Chicago. I think 27. We'll go 27. And Anaheim, who was 26th, 25th, 24th, 23rd. And Montreal is 32nd. So they sweep those 4 teams. They don't get a win against any of the top 8, nor 10, 15. Okay, they didn't do half bad against the rest of them. But as you can see here, the the Blackhawks' demise kind of starts with the playoff teams. Against playoff teams, they sucked. And against non-playoff teams, they also kind of sucked by not sweeping every single one from probably about San Jose and below. But yeah, that's really all I have for you guys today. I wanted to do something different, kind of a madness board as the hockey guy would reference it. But I want to thank you guys for watching. If you have any ideas for other madness boards I can do, leave them down and below. And I hope you guys enjoyed, and I want to thank you guys for watching and see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.